Hello everybody, today we'll be playing with the new Charts API introduced for iOS 16. We will create two types of charts, one with bars and another one with just dots. First off, let's create our model. So for this one, we will add to our WWDC 2022 app a to-do list. Here we have a to-do, it has priorities, a project, so whether it's a personal, work, growth, or wish list. Each to-do item has a title, a priority, and a project. We have a to-do service where we just ask for the service, and eventually we'll be able to add one. We create the singleton pattern, and that's it. And here we have mock data where we append tasks that belong to each project with a different priority. That's pretty much it. And just so we can visualize and later interact with the data, let's create a to-do list. There's not going to be anything new here, so I will just go fast by this view. To make things easier, I'll extend priority and project to include their own views. Of course, this is an extension related to views, so we're not going to do that in the service. We will do here directly in the view. Now we can see in the preview how the priority and the project have different images. These are all SF icons, SF symbols, sorry, with a different color. Now that we have the view that will represent our to-do, let's move on to creating the list. Since we are using the MVVM pattern, model view view model, we create a to-do list view model. It has a dependency. It's the to-do service. It gets the to-do array from the service, and that's what we pass to the view. Our to-do list view model is a protocol, and it's from an observable object. So what we need to do is use generics in this view. We have a view model that's of type to-do list view model, and our view model variable conforms to that. It's an observed object because we created a protocol that enables us to create a mocked to-do list view model for our previous, and that one has a mocked to-do list. Okay, our to-do list is ready. You have just different rows with different states. Now it's time to add our list to the content view, to the main view. We already have the welcome view from the previous video. All that we need to do is create a tab view and include both views. Now it's time for the view that will include the charts, the chart view. It will be the third one. Here's how the app looks like now. We have our welcome view where we can change the title. Then we have our to-do list provided by the service. Reminder that all of these to-dos are hard-coded. And then on the third tab, we'll have the charts displayed. Since we want our charts to display data over time, we did a little modification in our to-do model. We added a finish on date, and we have an is done property. Basically, if the finish on date has a value, then the task is done. And we changed some of the mock data with this past date method that creates a random date in the past. Now that we have an is done property, let's use it. So in our rows, if the to-do item is done, we will add a check mark. And let's make it orange. The chart view will also have a view model, and in this case, we can use the same one we're using for the to-do list. Just like in the to-do list view, we are adding a mocked to-do list view model here. Okay, let's begin. No matter with what type of chart you're starting, you always need to embed everything in a chart. Now notice how this is not color coding the chart. That's because it cannot recognize the view because charts are not included in the SwiftUI library. You need to import the charts library. Now, since we are starting with a bar graph, what do we need to add? A bar mark. A mark is one of the bars that appears in the graph and it needs data. So it needs a value on the x-axis and on the y-axis. So on the x is going to be the project. We want to leave the amount of items per project. And notice we have a plottable. We cannot just add our to-do items here since we want them grouped. We want to have a value here and a name. And right now each to-do list is by its own. We need a group. Let's create a struct where we will be adding that group. We'll have the project. This struct also includes the number of to-do items, which we'll represent with quantity. Okay, sorry about that. Went through the wrong path. So what we're going to do here is make project case iterable that will allow us to map all of the cases, and per project what we're going to do is filter the to-do array and count them, and that way we will have our to-do group with the project and the quantity. Okay, now that we have our groups, we need something to add to plottable. Our enum project needs to be string, and we will add the display name as the raw value. Just like with list, we can add our array to the chart initializer as part of the data. So we have our groups, and we can use the project in that group as an x-axis for our bar mark. Try updating the preview, and there we have it. And notice that all of the bars are the same height because as of now we have just specified the X value. The Y value will be the amount, and for that we use the quantity per group. Let's see here, the preview is updated. We can see much of the axis because there's no padding, but we will add that later. It's a little bit hard to tell this apart. All of it is blue. It's not easily recognizable. Chart has another property which is foreground style. We do it by value. And we don't need to specify the color. We just need to specify what's going to tell apart the bars here. So here it's going to be the raw value of the project. Notice how now the bars are colored differently. We never specified the color, just what was going to be referenced to draw them. For this one, we also got the legend to go away, so we'll use another modifier, chart legend, dot hidden. And now it's gone. Okay, let's add more bars. We want to compare the total to-do project with the completed ones. So we create another group with the completed to-dos. We're using the isDown property to filter them. And we, of course, create another group for this. Actually, let's first create another chart so we can compare the changes done in our bar graph with another one so we can use as a reference. Let's start with a line mark. The chart here will use the completed groups. And our X and Y value for now, let's just have the same. Now it's not looking that good because our mock data right now doesn't have completed projects. Let's change that. Okay, that looks much better. Now, here we will add two lines, one for the groups and one for the completed ones. For that, we need to drop using the completed groups in the charts and instead use two for each, one for the group and one for the completed group. Notice how we're here drawing the two lines. Now it doesn't look that pretty, so maybe instead of using a line mark, we can try using points. Okay, now it is much easier to see the difference between completed and total groups. Let's add a foreground color so it's easier, the green one with the completed one. And let's see if we can change our bar chart to show that difference between the points. Right now, we can only see the totals. Again, we will avoid using the groups in the chart initializer and we will use two for each. Okay, we should be good to go. Let's wait for the preview to update. And there we have it. Now, it's not that similar. Notice that we still only have one bar per X value. And that is because each of these is being stacked. We have the groups and the completed groups one on top of each other. And there's no clear way to tell the completed from the total. So let's add an opacity so we can tell them apart. That's better. We can see how now they are one on top of the other clearly with the opacity. But what we want is to highlight the completed group. So let's move the opacity to the total one. And here we need to avoid this stacking. Luckily for us, we can do that so it reflects the point chart below. BarMark has in its initializer another property, stacking. This is an enum that has a default value that we don't want. We want it unstacked. Let's add this value to both of the bar marks in the for each and see what happens. That looks much better. Now our bar reflects the same data that our point graph does. That's enough plotting for today. Let's change the graph appearance a little bit. So let's add first some padding so that it's not stuck to the edges. Now let's move the y-axis values to another position. Right now it looks very weird. For that we have another modifier, chart x-axis, and we can add an axis mark. Here we can specify the position of the axis. We'll change this one to leading. Whoops, wrong axis. Let's change the modifier to chart y-axis. Okay, that looks better. Let's now try running on a simulator. Okay, we have our changing title here. Our to-do list, some of the items are completed. We can tell that by the check mark. And here we have our charts. They look exactly like in the preview. You can tell apart the completed items from the total. And same goes for the point graph in the bottom. And that was all for today. We have our to-do list represented in two charts. Since this is my first time using charts, I'm sticking to basics. On the next episode, we will do more advanced stuff with charts since they support animation and other stuff. See you next time. Bye.